Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good, man. I wanted to get you on board. I know there's a lot of high school field hockey and soccer teams getting out there this week for summer workouts, and wanted to really hammer home the importance of avoiding dehydration. And I think one of the common misconceptions is dehydration. You just drink a little bit more water while you're practicing, and that'll solve it. But it really is a concerted effort. The night before, the day before, really every day, and keeping yourself hydrated.
Yeah, absolutely. To avoid any serious issues, yeah, drink a little bit more water and you're okay. But when you start talking about conditioning for getting ready for the season, and you talk about peak performance, it's really important to maintain hydration throughout practice, throughout competition, to really maintain peak performance.
I mean, Doc, you know high school kids. Obviously, a lot of these kids are in pretty good shape, but if you're a soccer or field hockey player, maybe you slacked off a little bit in April and May and June or whatever. Now you're going to get into these summer workouts where it's 85, 90 degrees, and maybe you haven't been drinking enough water. You've been drinking some other soft drinks, that kind of thing. And what are the dangers of dehydration, and what are some of the warning signs where these coaches should be on the lookout as we get into this July and August sort of preseason period?
Well, everyone thinks about dehydration, and the first thing they think about is cramping up, which is obviously annoying and painful. But there's some severe issues and severe injuries that can come along with severe dehydration, and that mostly comes along with elevated body temperature, and you've heard of heat stroke and heat exhaustion and those types of things. So cramping's one thing, and that's obviously something you want to avoid. But when you start looking for more severe things, kids start getting lightheaded, they start getting dizzy, their heart rate starts getting up, they get they get real profuse sweating. Those are some early warning signs of more severe issues that they want to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I guess these days you really have to be careful as a coach, because back in the old days it was like, the kid's out of shape, he's got to push through it, or she's got to push through it. How can a coach tell if a kid just isn't in the right type of shape, or if they're really having some problems with dehydration?
It's tough. The first thing is the coach. The better the coach knows the kid, the easier it is. Because some kids, we've all played with those athletes that just hate conditioning and don't want to do it.
True.
But when you start getting past just laziness, and you start seeing actual changes in their mental cognition, they're struggling to stay on their feet. They're not walking straight because of dizziness. Those become very severe issues, and they have to be taken care of right away.
Talk with Dr. Brian Sokalsky of Jersey Shore Sports Medicine in Summers Point. Wanted to give you all our high school athletes and coaches out there listening some tips on avoiding dehydration. Doc, give us a rundown real quick of what actually happens inside the body as the dehydration is taking effect. What actually happens? You hear about the cramping. What's going on with the muscles and the organs as the dehydration sets in?
Well, the problem with dehydration is sweating is the body's main way of regulating the body temperature. So as the sweat reaches the skin and the water evaporates, that's how the body's getting rid of the excess heat from exercising. What happens is in the summer, when the air temperature and the humidity in the air get closer to matching the inside body temperature, the body can't regulate the heat as well, and so it's just kind of pumping that water out. As the body runs out of water, it can't get rid of the heat, and so the body temperature starts rising. And as the body temperature starts rising from normal 98.6 degrees, starts getting past 100 degrees, 101 degrees, instead of the blood or the water going to the skin, the body has to maintain the blood going to the vital organs, and it can't get rid of the heat, and just keeps getting hotter and hotter, and eventually the organs just start shutting down, and that's where the severe issues start.
That's where you hear. You hear that almost every year with high school football and soccer and stuff like that in mid-August. Are you surprised that keeps happening every year?
Yeah, I am. I mean, for every year you hear about those one or two kids, and unfortunately, it keeps happening. Fortunately, it's only one or two kids across the country, but you would think that after one or two, coaches would be aware of it, parents would be aware of it, and it would stop. But there always does seem to be one or two kids each year that die from dehydration. Now, a lot of times there's other factors involved, like things like sickle cell disease that people are unaware of. That complicate things. But yeah, I mean, there's usually a component of dehydration involved.
Talking with Dr. Brian Sokalsky of Jersey Shore Sports Medicine in Summers Point. Doc, what should the parents know? Obviously, they're with their kids every day. What should they know about nutrition, water intake, daily water intake, that kind of thing? And because it's hard to really ask a 14 or 15-year-old to kind of regulate their own diet and their own liquid intake.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is regaining the hydration in between workouts. So if once the season starts and there are workouts day after day after day, it's very important to make sure they're drinking enough water in between the workouts. So the best way to do it is, and a lot of teams do it through their athletic trainers on the high school level, is weigh-ins. Weigh in before practice, weigh in after practice, see how much body weight water weight you've lost, and then drink enough to gain that weight back, and then weigh in again before practice the next day. And that's one way to make sure that you're maintaining proper hydration.
Oh, I never really thought about that. I mean, that's a good tip, though, to weigh yourself, before the next practice to see, okay, am I back where I was the day before or 2 days before?
Yeah, and of course, I mean, you don't have to be exactly the same amount, but as long as you're within half a pound, you're at least starting practice at a good level. And obviously the other way is, and parents aren't going to actually see this, but making sure they're checking with their kids. What does their urine look like? Is it, it should be a pale yellow. If it's darker, if it's got a strong scent, strong odor to it, that's another sign that they're not properly hydrated before practice, and they need to catch back up.
Doc, now, if a kid does suffer through a dehydration episode, say at one of these summer workouts, what's the protocol going forward? Should they take a day off or, rehydrate as quickly as possible? What's the strategy? Say you get severe cramping one day because you are dehydrated, because that can linger, a week or more when you get a serious calf cramp or hamstring cramp, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the severity of the episode. If you're talking about a bad cramping episode, you rehydrate like we talked about over the next 24 hours, and oftentimes it'll go away. If you start talking about elevated body temperature, you start getting into the heat exhaustion, heat stroke, that you really want to monitor for a few days. Make sure that the body temperature comes back down to normal. Make sure all the symptoms have completely resolved. Make sure the hydration is appropriately corrected. Depending on the severity will determine what kind of break they need. But really, the most important thing is to prevent it from happening in the first place, and that's proper hydration and also getting acclimated. If like you had said at the start, if they haven't worked out in a couple months, their bodies aren't ready to go ready for a hard workout in 90-degree temperature. So they have to kind of ease into it over the first week or two of practices, or more importantly, doing it now as they get ready for the season, so that when the season starts in August, they're 100% acclimated to working out in that kind of temperature and humidity.
Well, hopefully these kids are in shape. That's a good way to get on your coach's bad side, to come into preseason workouts out of shape.
There's nothing coaches hate more.
Good stuff, as always, Doc. Before we let you go, how can people get in touch with you if they have some more questions or want to go see you about an injury? Obviously, you're got the experience behind you, and you got a great office down there in Summers Point. So how can people get in touch with you?
They can give the office a call at Jersey Shore Sports Medicine, 609-904-2565. They can also go to our website, jerseyshore-sportsmedicine.com. They can follow us on Facebook at Jersey Shore Sports Medicine, or they can follow us on Twitter at Jersey Shore SM.
Good stuff. As always, Doc, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking a few minutes, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Dave. Always a pleasure.
That was Dr. Brian Sokalsky of Jersey Shore Sports Medicine. Give him a follow on Twitter. He has a lesson of the day, some great information. And check out his ad on page 2 of every edition of Glory Days magazine. You want some more information about him,